Thank you, guys. So some of you may have seen Martin in the previous session, and I'll just tell you a couple of things that I heard from people in the audience. So they were like, somebody came and said, I was just sitting and listening and listening. It was post-lunch, and then Martin started talking, and I thought, whoa, this guy is funny. So we also talked about how difficult it is to sustain people's attention. Because in this era of smartphones and a dozen distractions, it's very difficult to keep people's attention. And Martin, through his long career, has actually straddled multiple genres.
You think I'm so old? I mean, it's
maybe you've forgotten how old you are.
It's not so long, my career.
Maybe he's forgotten how old he is, but you don't look that old. I'm serious.
Your career is long too.
Yeah, straight back at you. Yeah. So he's done travel. He writes a travel column, which is very popular. Some of his travel writings have been featured in an anthology. He's written multiple books dealing with things ranging from political satire to technology dystopia to love, self-reflection, etc., etc. He's written non-fiction books, and I think you've written children's books as well.
One,
okay. And love songs. What's that about?
Yes.
That was for. You remember who it was for?
That was for a woman I was always in love with, but she always had a boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
And this terrible situation never stopped, which I tried to use it then for making money with a little CD.
Trade love for money. That's a good. That's a good deal.
Yeah. With texts about her and me and our love story, which was never really finished.
Yeah, I like the words he's using. Yeah, and how did her boyfriend take all that? Did he, he visit you?
In the beginning, he didn't know. Then she told it to him. Then I thought they're gonna separate, but they didn't separate.
That's when you broke your bone.
Then they went well again. Then she told it again. Then with something.
Is that when you broke your bones? Is that when you broke your hand? No, that was not to do with that boyfriend.
You remember when I broke my hand?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
No, that was when I was 16. I broke my hand.
That was another girl.
No, that was a motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, civilized enough. No, but on a more serious note, you've actually straddled so many different genres. And so what do you identify with? What makes you want to explore different genres? A lot of people say that you get better and better if you do the one thing and focus on it.
Yeah, I should. Sometimes I think I should, but then for me, I'm a writing nerd, so the thing I do best in life and most continuously is writing. I am not very good in being alone, but as soon as I have the computer on, I'm not feeling alone anymore, so it's kind of paradox. I have a job where I'm very, very alone, and in the same time I entertain myself in writing. And so when I was writing, I always had lots, well, some people say too many ideas, so I tried various things. And of course when I got children, I wrote children's stories, and when I had a love affair, I made songs out of it, and I always used the people in my life to squeeze them out and to get some of their experience in my art. I mean, that's very brutal to say it, but I think that's pretty well as most of the writers do.
Do you agree with what people say, that writers are actually voyeurs? They like to vicariously look at other people's lives and put that in their literature. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. Writers are voyeurs, but writers in a special way. I think not all writers are voyeurs, but all writers are exhibitionists, because they exhibit some of themselves, Of course, it's sublimized, if that's an English word.
Sure, yeah.
It's not. It's not. Thanks. It's not a sexual exhibiting, but it exhibits something. So we wouldn't be on the stage, you and me, if we were not out of that kind. We would sit at home and we would say, "Oh, this would be so terrible to be on a stage now. I'm so happy to be."
So if that makes you feel better, I was talking to a psychologist a few days ago, and he said that actually wanting to impact and influence people is a higher level of self-evolution. So maybe one way to look at it is to say that writers are exhibitionists. Another way to say is that writers want to impact or influence others.
Yeah.
So talking about impact or influence, so you've actually written some political satire as well.
Yeah.
And your novel Neil talks about a woman protagonist who has a very tough moral choice to make because she's has to expose some saucy details about a politician. Now, some of that's relevant today because there's constant talk about journalists and ethics and the line between journalism and politics. And this is a topic all over the world in this age of fake news. What are your views on that?
Well, when I wrote it, it was no topic at all. It was, I think, in Austria, it was the first dystopy in a time where this word was not even known by the people. It was in 2001. It was a different epoch. It was still, I wrote it in the 90s, can you imagine? And I don't want to sound all too proud about my prophetic ideas, but it was prophetic in a way that it had a right extreme party that had the majority, these kind of problems which you know in India as well, which we know everywhere on the planet now. And I'm kind of, I would have liked to be less prophetic because some of the things in the book got popular again now. Some of the things really stupid enough became true. Other things, of course, not. But it was, for my idea in the time then, it was only reflecting the most frightened things I could imagine. And now if you read it, it's not a bad book, but it's simply a normal book. It sounds like a book written in 2019 by somebody who didn't have a lot of new ideas.
Right. No, it is prophetic indeed, and I guess just also relevant.
Yeah. So sorry. It was when the book came out. Everybody told me, "Yeah, it's good, but it's so negative." Yeah. Now it's not so negative. It's so normal. It's such a normal book. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted.
So you've written a book called The American Trap, which talks about America under Trump, and it's based on your personal experiences in Ohio a few years ago. What explains the rise of this phenomenon called Trump, and what implications does this have, positive, negative, or neutral, for the rest of the world?
It has big implications, of course. It's something that nobody thought that could be possible, but that obviously happened. It sounds like being out of a really bad movie, but it's our present times, and we have to deal with it. In 2017, I was invited to a university in Ohio to be writer in residence to Bowling Green State University, and I gave a German course for 15 or 16 people there. They have a little German department, and it was first time in my life I did a thing like that. It was wonderful because it was the first time I had already been 10 times maybe in the USA before. But this time I was on the countryside. I was not in New York or San Francisco or wherever, but in a little city with 30,000 people, and 15,000 upon them are students, and the others work for the students, more or less. So it was my first time in the real America, in the Midwestern. And the Midwestern was as well the region where Trump won the elections. Strange enough, it was quite difficult to find people who really voted for Trump and expressed that freely. That too, but still, I realized with many people they might have voted for Trump, but they don't tell it because they're a little bit ashamed. It's like if I would ask you now, how many times per week are you masturbating? It was a terrible question, because how could you react if you say never, 0 times? You might be a liar, and if you and with any other number, I might embarrass you. So my question is embarrassing you, and this is the same when I would ask you, did you vote for Trump?
And is it possible that this whole sense of shame created by the left-leaning press and media could actually be responsible for the rise of Trump itself?
I do not think so at all. The left always says, we are powerful, we are guilty, we made the fascists. But I'm coming from a country where 75 years ago there was fascism, and I tell you, we don't have the power to make fascists. They are fascists, and they are among us, and they are here in India too. And it's not our ways. They don't get radicalized by me or you. They radicalized themselves because we let them. Of course, some of this argument may be true, but it's too easy.
Okay.
It's too easy.
And
for me, but I'm having discussions about that with friends every week, nearly.
I see. And you talked about what happened in Europe 75 years ago, and your father was a well-known writer himself, and he dealt with some of those topics. So how has that shaped your writing?
Well, of course, it shaped my life, because when I was a child, I always saw that cool father that could, like, he was at home, my mother was working, and he cooked for me, and he was a good father up to a certain point. He was a complete egoist and a maniac, but I saw a life model which then in the end I chose by myself. I really hate people that make the same as their parents, but I became one of them because at one point it was easier for me. I had a big imagination, and it was easier for me to earn money by writing than to earn money by working at the post office, which I did in that time. So I started writing as a professional writer. But of course the influence of my father was quite big, and most of you maybe got out of the, no, in India maybe not, but in India maybe it's later, but most of the Austrians have the possibility to get out of the influence of their parents with 18 years. Maybe in India you're much more family stuck, and it's like, in India you're more like me.
Almost never, yeah.
I got almost never, and I got out of it maybe with 30. So that was quite long. but of course, my father, as being a very anarchistic person, he was sent to war. My father was an old father. He was born in 28, and he was sent to war as a 17-year-old boy. He was sent 2 times to a place, but it was always at the moment where, on the day before, the German army fell apart, so he never actually started fighting. But he was coming from a Nazi family. He was, after the war, very upset with his parents, especially with his father, because he said, because he experienced that everything that their parents said to him had said to him since he was a little child, was in reality not true. They were criminals, and that made a big conflict. I mean, the maximum conflict you can have with your parents if you don't like.
Is if you think they're criminals.
Yeah, yeah, and if you think that the system they worked for was a criminal system. But my father always said that would have been okay if after 45 his father would have said to him, okay, I was wrong, I am sorry, I didn't knew better. But he did not. He was offended by losing the war. My grandparents, I didn't meet 3 of the 4 grandparents. My 2 grandfathers died before I was born, so I was not able to know them. But I was brought up in a family where Second World War was, on the contrary to other families, was always a topic. My mother and my father always had the discussion that my mother said, but your father was a big Nazi, and my father said, no, but your father was the bigger Nazi. So that was the
nice dinner table conversation.
The soundtrack of my childhood. So the topic was always there. And for me it was difficult to make a rebellion against my father, because how can you rebel against a father who already rebelled so much?
Exactly, yeah.
It was, I mean, I couldn't be more anarchist than him. He was such a free way. There was the possibility for me to become a very anti-father, to become maybe a lawyer or something very strict, but I was not capable. And then I became a writer, and when I was 35, 40, I realized I would have loved to be a physician, but then it was too late.
Too late.
Yeah.
So just changing tracks a little bit, you've written extensively on travel, and your travel columns are very widely followed in Austria and Germany. You also compiled those into a book, which again was very popular. And you said you've traveled a fair bit in India as well. Which is your favorite place overall? Favorite could mean anything, positively, negatively, anything.
Wow, it's always a very difficult question. I was in Namibia one day. It was in a place where they have a German past. It was called Malta-Höhe, and I was in, well, I don't know if it was my favorite place anyway, but it was a nice place. It was the landscape was very beautiful, and I was reading on the balcony there. I was reading a sign that was written Malta-Höhe. The place was called like this. Malta-Höhe is not the ass of the world, but you can already feel it. But it was more funny in German. But
so the sign actually said Malta-Höhe is not the ass of the world.
But you can already hear it or feel it from here. And it was really true if your mind there was so poor. I mean, this was really very, very basic part of the world.
Okay, and I believe there was some stuff on the mating habits of giraffes in Namibia or something in one of your books.
Yes. How do you know that? Did they translate that to you?
Word kind of gets around, yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember two giraffes. You know, the giraffes. They're always very calm, walking around because they are so high and not really afraid of the lions if they are quite far away, and the lion would rather not attack a giraffe, but would look like maybe the small giraffes. And when they mate, the male giraffe, I mean, I can't.
Are you going to demonstrate
yes,
something?
Yes, I try to. I try to. Like the woman giraffe is standing there. They're very relaxed, you know. They're very relaxed. And then the male giraffe comes from the back, and he is very relaxed, standing, but quite too near from the woman giraffe. And then the woman giraffe decides if there's a sexual intercourse, or she takes 2 or 3 steps to the front. It means no. Or she simply stays in a very relaxed way. It means yes.
Wow.
That's
called communication.
That was the story. Did you read that story?
I didn't read the full story, but thank you for so vividly.
Oh yeah.
demonstrating
Yeah. Yeah, you were afraid that the exhibitionist uses this
so I can
story now to make the first Indian scandal. I saw it in your eyes.
So, well, on that note, there's actually a lot more things we can talk about, but we're running out of time. Would like to throw the floor open to any questions you might have. Martin's obviously done a range of things, as you can see. Any questions?
What was the thing that encouraged you to write about the traveling?
I read many bad travel stories in my life, and when I read about other countries, I always thought these articles are not any better than like tourist guides that you buy in the bookshops. And I always imagined travel stories to be something that you read and you realize this person was there. And until now, my idea of a good travel story is to tell the people I was there. I mean, that's enough. If you succeed in doing that, it's not yet a good story, but it's the basic facts. It's the basic things you should communicate, I think. Strange enough, not so much as it could, but it should. I want to do more of that, but then again, maybe I keep them away, you know. I have the tendency to keep things in compartments. This is why I speak Portuguese and I speak Spanish, which is very rare, but I have a frontier between them, and I don't know why. Lots of people who have much more language talent than me are mixing these two languages. I always see them mixing the two languages, and I always think, no, it's like this, it's like this, it's like this. So even not being a great language speaker, I can really judge with what is Spanish, what is Portuguese.
I'm sorry to say I haven't read any of your work, but just a general question I want to ask is, do you think that knowing about a place and then going to that place makes a difference, or going to a place where you haven't heard anything about? The two different versions of it.
Of course it's a difference, as you know as well, but when I was not traveling as much as now, I always thought you have a kind of obligation to know a lot about the place. You qualify of going somewhere via your knowledge of a place. This is classical thinking. When I was doing so many travel stories, I had to do it like this, that I went to press trips not knowing about the place, because I cannot like concentrate on the place before the journey and during the journey and after the journey. I would do that if I travel 1 or 2 times a year, and that would be in the ideal world. But I'm traveling 1 time a month, so I skipped the one that I can skip the concentration before. So many times I come to places where I don't know a lot about it, and then I try to inform myself as good as I can, of course, about the place, and afterwards I try to write about it. But Pune, I looked on Wikipedia before. Really, and that is rare. But this is not a press trip, so and I was always interested in India. I have been here 18 years ago, and not here in Pune, but in Mumbai, in Goa, and in Kerala, and I'm really curious now how the country changed, or if it changed. Of course, some things changed, some things not. But I'm very happy to be here again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Great having you over. Thank you.
Thank you.